Welcome back. This is part 2 of our interview with Master Tyler Martin. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, please check it out first for your own continuity. Thanks, and enjoy the show.
So anyway, when the UFC starts creating this proving ground for martial arts techniques and skills and a way of training, if you don't go and look at your own martial arts program and try to evaluate it and make some adjustments, you're really missing it. Like, you're missing the evolution of martial arts. And now everyone's exposed to you could get on YouTube and watch cool martial arts videos all day long. I've done that a few times. And you could do this, and then you're exposed to all these different martial arts. Back in the 80s, and thank those guys that started those martial arts schools, the Taekwondo schools and all those guys. I look at those as pioneers because they only knew what they knew. Like, they went and trained, and then they only knew what they knew, and then they started, creating syllabus and started training people on masses and opening up locations, and thank heaven they did, because that's what, opened the door for us. But when the UFC really got popular and started creating this proving ground of what works, what doesn't work, and then you got to see these different styles. If you don't look at your own style and say, hey, we need to make a couple adjustments here. Now, that doesn't mean you don't stay true to your style, but making some adjustments to your training regimen is something that our previous companies that we've worked for, they didn't do. And I think TruMotion is that's one of the things I'm proud of, is we were able to look at some of the things that we were teaching and say, this doesn't really have real life application.
Oh, yeah. Well,
we need to make some adjustments and adjust this out because this doesn't have real life application. And I don't know. So that's that.
No, that is very true. Because I remember going through some of the older techniques, and you're like, why are we doing this? Like, seriously, we're really going to teach this with a straight face and be okay with it?
Yeah. So you go back to say Fred Villari back in the 60s and 70s, and he's just slapping the hell out of everybody and just tough as nails. Right. Mm-hmm. And was there anybody that was like, hey, Fred, I don't know if that's a good technique. Oh, come here, punch in. Let me show you.
I'll show you. I'll show you.
I'll slap the shit out of you too. Hand me that magazine. Yeah. And he'd roll up a magazine and slap the crap out of somebody with the magazine. And now you can look at it and you say, there's this move I saw in the UFC. I watched UFC last weekend. There's this kick combination that I watched, somebody use, and it knocked them out. And it was a good technique. We need to incorporate that. So let's start training that. That's a good move. And I like that openness, and I like that open-minded approach. And then I think to have the open-minded approach, and this is tough for martial artists most of the time, is just controlling your ego to say, hey, we need to adjust this. There's an adjustment that needs to be made.
Yeah.
And then making that adjustment.
Most people don't want to do that, because I remember hearing stories from Brent about how he would speak up in the workouts, and then they would eventually just told him he couldn't come to the workouts anymore, because he's like, every time you come, you're questioning what we're teaching. But he was mainly asking for clarification, meaning because he has trained in so many other styles and systems and MMA and this and that, to where he's all like, that doesn't work in this application.
Yeah, so Brent's over at Black House in LA training with Anderson Silva and these guys, and legit, obviously, the top tier people. And then he's doing Muay Thai fights in Thailand. And so this guy has legit fighting experience. And so he shows up and he says, hey, this move really doesn't work, and we're teaching it, and it doesn't really have application. And instead of saying, hey, well, Brent, we appreciate your knowledge of martial arts. Give us an idea. What's your idea? How do we change this? How do we make this better for the student? And that's how I approach it when Brent comes out. I'm like, hey, how do we make this better for the student? What's your idea? Talk to us. Instead, the other approach is, Brent, shut up.
Yeah. Or come on over here.
You're bucking the tiger. Hey, don't be disrespectful.
Yeah. Or we'll have a special workout for you, and we'll just try to beat you up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's no good. And that's the approach a lot of those guys take.
And that is one thing I truly appreciate with TruMotion, is the fact that, and that all stems from you and Dave, where it's like, you both understand that it's like, there are things out there that are better. And it's like, how can we acknowledge that our techniques are what they are, but there's always room for improvement. So it doesn't matter how good you get or how well known you are, nothing's perfect. So it's always a constant evolving thing.
Right.
And that's because you guys have taken the ego out of the equation.
We've tried to. I mean, it's tough, but you're exposed to all these different martial arts. So is there a universe where you can still train in Kempo and you can take some of the great things from jiu-jitsu and incorporate those into your syllabus and your training and have people have an understanding of jiu-jitsu? They're not going to become proficient in jiu-jitsu or become jiu-jitsu professionals, or like they're not going to be as bad as the blue belt down the street that's training jiu-jitsu 4 days a week. They're not going to be that good. But they also have stand-up game.
Yeah.
Right? So the jiu-jitsu guy may not be training in stand-up, and your Kempo guy may be a lot better in stand-up. Are they going to be as good in stand-up as somebody that's doing Muay Thai? Well, maybe not, but they do have some jiu-jitsu where the Muay Thai guy doesn't. So you're trying to find this universe and just realize that people are coming to you to train, and in reality, you'd love them to train 10 hours a week. You'd love them to train 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. But in reality, they're going to train 3 hours a week.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's kids. So you're trying to find this universe where you have this great, fun syllabus, and it's effective, and it's efficient, and it's fun. And if it's not those three things, you're out of business. So whatever you were trying to do in the martial arts community, you were unable to make a living doing it. So now all this wealth of knowledge that you have, you can still teach in the park and volunteer, but how are you going to get your message out there? You're not.
Exactly.
You're not going to have a following. You're not going to have students show up. I mean, you may for a short period of time, but one of our good friends, Tony, tried that.
Yeah.
Right. And God bless him. And my understanding, it didn't work out, but it has never worked out for anybody.
No.
So you have to have a marketable syllabus, and you want it to be the best you can. And there's no perfect thing. And if there was a perfect training regimen out there, how would somebody come in and dominate the rest of everybody else? And even in the UFC, if there was a perfect training regimen, how come there hasn't been several guys take that training regimen and go beat John Jones? So you look at the very top echelon and you're like, yeah, so everyone's doing the best they can. And these professional fighters, I mean, everyone wants to compare themselves to this, but in reality, these guys are beasts. These guys are animals.
Yeah.
These guys are training 8 hours a day, 6 hours a day, 8 hours a day. They've got nutritionists. They've got cardio programs. They've got, a massage therapist after the workout. They've got a stretch therapist. These guys are pros, right?
When your job is to beat people up, you get really damn good at beating people up.
Yeah. And their window of earning is, I would say is, 4 to 6 years probably on average. And the greater ones maybe stretch to 10 years, and the not so great ones maybe go to 2 years. But even these not so great ones are physical beasts.
Yeah.
These guys are just studs. And these women, they're animals. They're just on a different level.
Yeah, this is very, very true. And I think sometimes people get that misconception of when we say we're training people in martial arts, they think, oh, well, we're training UFC type fighters. It's like, no, we're training normal people because I know for me, I want my students to know how to fight, and I want them to be tough, but I want them to be what our slogan is, better people.
Exactly.
And that's who we're training. We're training people to go into society to be better people.
Yeah, so you can train people to be so tough, but it's such a physically demanding thing. And it's physically demanding on you. It's physically demanding on them to a level that most people are never going to do that. But training people in a physical sport like martial arts, but having the mindset of training them to become mentally tougher, that's the goal. Because that's what's going to make a better person.
That mental toughness is definitely something that, unfortunately, is becoming less and less of a thing, unfortunately, nowadays. That's why I'm really proud of the work that we're doing here, because we have our thumb on the pulse of what's going on in the future. So if we want to be able to, quote unquote, change what we see now, that starts with the kids that are coming into our class.
And that's where everybody's not equal. That mental toughness is a key.
Yeah.
And And I think you're right. I think society is, to become mentally tough, you need harsh conditions to become mentally tough. You can't become mentally tough in soft conditions. You need harsh conditions.
Yeah.
And I know we only get the kids, we only get the students for 3.5 hours, 4 hours a week. But for those 4 hours and that kid's forced to do push-ups, he's forced to push himself, or she is forced to push herself harder than she wants to, harder than he wants to. That's what creates mental toughness.
Yeah.
And it's that harsh condition. It's that when the dojo gets hot, the windows start to sweat, the roof starts to drip, and you're like, where's this water coming from? The roof's leaking. It's like, no, that's condensation on the roof, bro.
We just say the ceiling's crying.
Yeah, the ceiling is sweating. And that's what creates mental toughness. And I think a lot of our parents get that.
Yeah.
And I think, and here's the crazy thing. I think people that grew up in an environment where they were able to develop their mental toughness in their family, they sometimes don't hold a high value on it because they feel like it's gratis. They feel like it's just something that everybody has. So they look at their kid and they're like, oh, my kid will develop that. It's fine. But you know what? When the parents grow up without that mental toughness and they've had to feel what it feels like not to stand up for yourself, those parents I find are probably our most supportive because they come in and they realize, hey, I grew up, I was missing something significant that I needed in my life, and it was mental toughness, and I want my kid to have it. Here's my kid. Beat him down. Yeah. You know what I mean? Make them do push-ups till they can't scratch their head.
No, it's funny because I know, being a parent, you being a parent, it's ruthless. There's no days off. There's nothing easy. So, I understand parents are going to do the best that they can with their kids. We had one of our young kids on our last beginning test. He's a great kid, but he's the one that's he needs the mental toughness. It's we weren't doing anything crazy, and he broke down 3 times within an hour.
Yeah, and so you look at that kid and you're like, okay, how's this kid going to handle junior high?
Yeah.
Because junior high is full of jerks.
Yep.
That's why they call it junior high.
Yep.
It's full of jerks, right? And so how's he going to handle junior high when these kids are just mean as hell and ruthless? And when you show up and you have that anxiety because you're like, oh boy, I'm going to run into Tommy today and he's going to tell me I look stupid again and it's going to be hard on me. And you think this kid's going to focus in math? No.
Yeah.
You think this kid's going to be focusing in political science? No. He's not going to be able to pass his history exam. Why? He's too stressed. He's got anxiety. He's got all these issues that's going on in his head. He's got this battle that's going on in his head every day. And it's because he's not mentally tough enough to tell Tommy to STFU.
Yeah, pound sand.
Yeah. Watch out, buddy.
No, So, and it's just crazy how little can just throw people over the edge.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot. It's a tinderbox.
Yeah.
Everybody's walking around with a tinderbox in their pocket, waiting for that thing to be lit up, and then it's it's on. It's on,
exactly. And I never thought I would see as many people with that type of mentality.
Well, it's an emotional state, right? Yeah. So when you get people that are emotional and they make emotional decisions are never good. And you could say, well, I don't know about that. I fell in love with my girlfriend and I asked her to marry me. Okay, so sometimes it works out. But I'm talking about other emotional decisions. Emotional decisions like, hey, I'm really hungry. Oh, okay, well, there's a burger place. Let's stop there. And then you realize you have a salad at home. But you're not going to wait till you get home because there's a burger place right there. So it's an emotional decision. Or you make an emotional decision to, I'm going to slough with my friends. Really? I want to. Yeah, I want to. It's an emotional decision.
Yeah.
And then, you get emotional people that are, the phrase the Karen or the Chad that goes into the restaurant and they chew out the manager of the restaurant.
The person that always asks to see your manager.
Yeah, it's that you ordered a $10 burrito and it didn't come out the way you wanted it. Why not just point it out to the manager and the manager will probably comp the burrito and then you can take it home and warm it up or you can order something else or whatever. And you can just kind of deal with that. But instead you get emotional because now this is your time and somebody wronged you and you're emotional. And so you make these bad decisions. And I think in society, if you look at these major problems we have, it's all through emotional decisions. And mental toughness I think is the prescription for emotional decisions. You don't see a lot of mentally tough people making emotional decisions, men or women, right?
Yeah.
When they're mentally tough, they just don't make emotional decisions. And I think that's really important for society as far as the direction we're headed. We need to get more mentally tough people.
No, yeah, it's very, very true. Because when you phrase it that way, mentally tough people don't make emotional decisions. I haven't heard it phrased that way before, but that's probably the best way. That's makes the most sense.
Yeah.
When you're mentally tough, you don't look at things emotionally.
Yeah, and then it's exposure too. It's exposure to I was talking to somebody the other day, and we were talking about how to make young men turn into men.
Yeah.
And the way you do that is you expose them to men. Right?
Yeah.
You put young men around men that aren't their fathers, around men that aren't their uncles. And, fathers can do it and uncles can do it too. But I would say the easiest way is to put them around other men that hold them accountable. Because let's say if you have a 14-year-old boy, 10-year-old boy, 12-year-old boy, and he's like working for a man that he doesn't really know, and that the man's like, hey, you got to pull those weeds. Now there's not, I'm kind of tired. I don't care. Pull those weeds.
Yeah.
There's some accountability, and that's just going to raise a little bit better person. And women the same way. So boys and girls, there's so many things that are similar. I mean, obviously so many things that are different, but they need to be around other adults that hold them accountable. And when you have a child, and for some reason they've grown up in a safe place, right? A safe place meaning nothing but kind words. And I believe in kind words. I think kind words are wonderful. I think, every day when I wake up, my kids, I tell them how proud I am of them. And that's something I never heard when I was growing up, In fact, I don't even think I've heard it as an adult from my parents. But I tell my kids that every day because I think those are kind words. Mm-hmm. But also, if they grow up in a safe place and it's a soft, safe place, what happens when they're really exposed in that junior high scenario? How do they deal with that? Because it's so foreign to have somebody tell them they look ugly. Mm-hmm. It's so foreign to have somebody bump them to a hallway and not say, oh, sorry about that, excuse me. And they're like, hey, get out of the way. It's so foreign when somebody makes a comment about their body that's not positive, right? It's so foreign to them when somebody tells them that they're not sufficient. You're not sufficient. Whatever your efforts were right there, not sufficient. It didn't work. You're stupid. You suck. One of these words, it's just like a firing, it's a harsh word.
Yeah.
And they've never heard it before by anybody that actually loves them. So they don't know how to accept it. They don't understand that criticism has expiration, right? So when you come in and you criticize your kid's room and you're like, hey, hey, Melanie, you were supposed to clean your room. This looks horrible. Your room's not clean. Look at all the laundry you jammed under your bed. Get that out of there. Hey, you need to organize these drawers. This isn't good. You're better than this. Come on, step it up. And then you walk out, and then you walk back in 30 minutes or 20 minutes, and you're like, hey, okay, that looks a lot better. Oh, this is good. And that criticism she received had an expiration date. It expired when she fixed it.
Yeah.
But when you grow up in a safe place and you're like, well, I'm just going to help my child clean their own room, that coddling is something that I think there's some people like Gen X people, my generation people, maybe even Gen Z people, who grew up in a world where there wasn't a lot of coddling. So now they're over coddling, right? So now they're like helping their kid clean their room. And I understand, I helped my 6-year-old clean her room up until maybe 6 months ago.
Yeah. And
now it's like, hey, you got to go clean your own room. Why? Well, if you want to go to eat, you want to go get ice cream, you want to go for a bike ride, that room needs to be clean. This is your responsibility. And then I'll walk in, I'm like, this isn't sufficient. Do it again. And I think that, is that harsh? I don't think so, but gosh, I think a lot of parents may think so.
I agree, because when you said that, a lot of the Gen X parents never received that like loving affirmation or like acceptance or anything like that, like you said about your parents. A lot of them, and I feel like that's kind of, I don't want to say the problem where we're at now, but they've done such a 180
right,
to where they're like, God, I cannot be like how I was raised.
It's an overcorrection.
I'm going to be the exact opposite, and that's not good.
Yeah, somebody I knew used to make correlations with motorcycle riding with life. Like everything in life could be correlated to sparring or motorcycle riding.
Exactly.
And in motorcycle accidents, the ones that are the toughest are overcorrections. Like when you're swerving and you're like swerving and then you swerve back. Like if you see cars and they flip over on the freeway, you're like, how the hell did that happen? It's overcorrection, right? And so in society, when you make these overcorrections, you're rolling down the freeway.
Yeah,
you're gonna create a pileup because you're rolling down the freeway, and it's crazy. But that's these overcorrections in society are the same way. It's a generation of people that maybe were the first people to have mom and dad at work, and you're a keychain kid, a latchkey kid.
Yeah.
And so you go home, you don't have any affirmation, you don't have anybody helping you with your homework, and there's a little bit of a loneliness, right? Even if you're with your brother and sister, and I mean, if you got an older brother like me, I mean, his job was to pick on me and bully me, and that probably helped me in the long run, but at the time it sucked.
Yeah.
And then you grow up and you don't want your kid to ever feel that way, so you're always doing coddling, you're always doing other things, but then you overcorrect, and instead of just providing your child something that you didn't have, now you're taking away a lot of the positive things that you got provided, like that independence and that resilience that you learned how to have and you created in your own body. You never got provided an environment to create that because your mom was always helping you clean your room. Yeah.
No, I see a lot of that.
Yeah.
And it's I guess that's the first stage is like, you got to recognize that.
Yep.
And then we can work on trying to fix it. But I completely agree. It seems like everybody's done such a 180 with parenting that they're like, they feel in their heart, they feel like they're doing the right thing.
Absolutely. Everybody loves their kids. I mean, if you looked around at this world and you don't think that people are even or equal, everyone's equal. There's one thing that we all have in common. We all love our children and we want our children to be better off than we were.
Exactly.
And that's one, if you just look at the commonality of that and you have a parent walk in and they're just totally separate mindset than you, that's the commonality I always look at. I just realize, this parent loves their kids just the same as I love my kid. They want the best thing for them. Now, the vehicle that we both use to get to this point may be different, but here they are.
Exactly. Hey, phone ringing.
Hey, good times.
Yeah.
Telemarketer.
Bus Association wants to give us a call, but they can wait.
No way.
Donation.
Yeah. So, goodbye.
Yeah. Hey, here's something I've learned. Never donate money to the sheriff's department.
Yes.
I love police officers. I love the sheriffs.
Well, we're going to be listening to this for a second.
That's okay. I love the sheriff's department. I love police officers. I love the men in blue, the women in blue, the first responders, but never. The biggest mistake you can make in donating money is donating money to the sheriff's department. These guys are relentless.
I know I donated once, and I keep getting envelopes, phone calls.
It's the phone calls. It's like twice a month, man. I think I donated $200 one time. I wish I would have paid $4 and not given them my phone number.
Yeah, exactly. Because then they make you feel bad for not donating. You're like, oh, you don't care.
And they always have an
safety.
East Coast accent with a local phone number.
Yeah, exactly. No, but no, I completely agree with the whole. Like, you gotta recognize the problem first and understand what's causing the problem, and then being willing to make the changes. And I think that's where we're in a unique position to where we have the ability to make those changes as long as people are willing to give us a shot.
Hey, a lot of people that bring their kids in never train in martial arts ever.
Yeah.
So these guys are these men and women, these parents, they've heard, they believe, they've heard maybe some benefits, and hats off to them.
Yeah.
Hats off to them. I mean, can you imagine never training in martial arts, but you believe that it's going to work for your kids, so you come in and sign them up? I mean, that's a lot of confidence. That's a good thing.
It is. And this is coming from somebody, I know you did sports growing up. I did sports growing up. Athletics are great, but they're seasonal. And the older I've gotten, I've figured out that team sports, they tend to start to segregate kids right away, to where you have the superstar and then you have everybody supporting the superstar.
Hey, I played football for several years, and I loved playing football, but I was not that good because I hated running.
Yeah.
And team sports, if you're talented and you're athletically inclined, team sports can be a very positive influence on a young kid's life because you have a coach. So here goes back to the accountability thing. You have a coach that's going to ride up the tail of that kid.
Oh, I have one of those.
Hustle up, Martin, let's go. And so this is a great thing. But you also have kids that don't fit in team sports, and it just compounds that.
Yep.
Well, Tommy, you're really not that athletic. You're going to be sitting on the pine. And then they had to come out with these rules in recreational sports where every kid has to play X amount of minutes. Why? Because the coaches were out there coaching the Super Bowl every week. I know my football coaches, they thought it was the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You know, and then you have other sports, like I wrestled for 9 or 10 years, and I was really good at that. And that sport, there is no place to hide. Like, you are the only one on the mat, and it's and that's a great sport. But you're right, it's seasonal. And so what happens in the off season? How do you continue training? And then you have spikes into the endorphins that are released when you're exercising are these positive endorphins that your schoolwork's probably getting done better when you're in wrestling or whatever your sport is, right? And then when that sport goes away, your endorphins drop, and then it creates a vacuum void. So imagine you got a teenage kid, 15 years old, and he's wrestling, because that's the sample we're using. And he's wrestling, and then wrestling season's over. So he's got this like 3 or 4 day a week. He's training. He's got a team. They're doing team activities. He's got wrestling competitions on Saturday. So he's spending 10 hours a week doing this sport, and his parents are there, and everybody's gung-ho, and they're patting him on the back, and he's feeling good about himself, and he's got all these positive reinforcement things, and all of a sudden wrestling ends. Mm-hmm. Then you got this void in this kid's life. Well, what happens? Well, this is a vacuum. It sucks something into that void. So now you have to pray it's a positive thing. And that's the one thing I really love about martial arts. It's not a season.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, if you're going to get patted on the back and being like, hey, good job, man. Good job. That goes on all year. You know, that goes on. And then the summer happens. Hey, you can double up your lessons. You can come in more often. You can work out. You can fill those voids with positive things. I've heard so many parents sign up their teenage daughters, right? And they sign up like a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old girl, and in this period of their time, they're going through a bunch of changes. You know, I've got a 14-year-old, so I'm aware of these things. And martial arts creates this environment that's safe. Martial arts creates this environment where they have to get ready, they have to show up, and they have to participate. And having a teenage girl, I mean, my teenage daughter, it's like nothing's fun, everything's horrible. Nothing's fun. Yeah. Their friends are cool. You're not cool. Nothing's cool. But she has to show up. And you know what? She's met friends in karate, and now she wants to show up to martial arts training more than I want to show up to martial arts training. And I own the business. And she wants to be there more than me. And I'm just like, this is great. Why? I know my 14-year-old daughter is not going to get into drugs in the dojo. She's not going to get pregnant in the dojo. Yeah. I can somewhat control who she's hanging out with and who her influences are. I have a little bit of like say into that. And even if I was just simply a parent in the dojo and I wasn't the sensei, I'd still have a say. Why? Because I've got the ear of the sensei, and I'm like, hey, you know, my daughter, hey, she's hanging out with this kid over here. Is that a good kid? Yeah, okay, great. And then I know that, hey, you guys need volunteers on Saturday? I'll drop my daughter off at 9 a.m. I'll pick her up at 4 p.m. Does she need to bring a lunch? Yes, she does. Perfect. And then I know that she's there. And I know that when she's there, she's not on her phone. She's not on the TikTok. She's not on the Snapchat. She's at the dojo working out, training. She's learning how to be a leader.
Yeah.
I think it's just invaluable. It's just invaluable. The dojo has become this invaluable thing for my kids. And even if I wasn't, an instructor for TruMotion, or it would still be an invaluable scenario for me. Mm-hmm. As a father, oh my gosh, it's the structure that it provides is you can't find it.
Yeah. No, the fact that we're not seasonal, I think, is a huge benefit for us. And I don't know, maybe you've noticed that when kids come in to train that have done sports, you notice lulls to where it's like they're gung-ho for 3 months, and then they kind of plateau a little bit.
Yeah, they've been trained to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So you got to push them through that plateau. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, man, they hit another peak where they just like skyrocket in their skill and their attitude and all this, because they're used to only 3 months of something at a time.
Yeah, the ebb and flows.
Yeah.
Right? So they've gotten in this roller coaster, the ebb and flows, right? And then and when it's going good. And then they're kind of burnt out and they're like, I need a break. I need a break. And the problem with that mindset is, What happens when you turn 18? What happens when you graduate college?
Yep.
And then you go get a job? There are no breaks.
No.
You get a week off.
Exactly.
Choose wisely.
You got the weekend.
Yeah, and then
need
you
a
go
break.
through these lows, these ebb and flows, and you take those ebb and flows. If you don't train those ebb and flows out of that kid, that kid's going to take those ebb and flows into life.
Yeah.
And then you're in a relationship. Like how many times you look at the young generation, like the girls and the boys that are in their 20s, men and women, I guess, are in their 20s, and you look at the ebb and flows that they're experiencing in their own relationships where, you know, after they're dating somebody for 3 or 4 months, they're like, yeah, you know, it's just, you know, I'm just not really into Susie anymore.
Yeah.
She doesn't really, you know, I'm not excited to be around her anymore. And you're like, where did my son get this? Susie's a wonderful kid. What's going on? Mm-hmm. But the truth is the most focus he's ever had in his life was those 5 months worth of baseball practice and camp. Baseball starts in May, ends in October. At the end of October, he got this huge break.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't play enough emphasis on that when kids are young. They think that, oh, they're just kids. They're not developing any habits like that.
Yeah.
It's like, no, that's absolutely false.
I agree. It's false. They're developing all habits.
Exactly. So if you're like, hey, you get to do this for 3 months and then you get to stop, you're unintentionally teaching them that they'll do something for 3 months and then they get to do something else.
Yeah. And so why be involved? Why be invested?
Yeah, exactly.
They're not going to be invested. And they learn these things where it's like, yeah, it's just ebb and flows, man. When things are going good, that's great. When things are going bad, I take a break.
Exactly. I mean, we'll just look at the workforce nowadays. I mean, if you go up to Stephen, you just got out of the professional realm or corporate realm. Like, how many people did you know that you worked with that were like, this is my 5th job in 7 years?
Yeah, quite a few of them. Yeah, it comes down to attention span, I think. If we do seasons, if we do things that like, oh, this is going to end. It's like, well, that's the end of my attention span. Like the TikToks, right? They're 8 seconds long because that's about how long we can pay attention these days.
So there was a statistic out when I bought my first house. And this was like, I was 18, so I don't even know. I'm embarrassed to even say the year. What year was that? 1994. I think I bought it in 95, but I hadn't turned 19 yet. Or maybe I just turned 19. And there was this statistic out. My realtor's name was Rick. And I remember Rick told me, well, Tyler, you're not going to own this house forever. You'll probably own it for 7 years. I go, really? He goes, that's the average. And then a couple years later, I sold it. I bought this house in West Jordan. And then when I bought the house in Harriman that I live in now, the average had gone from 7 years to 3 years.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
And that's a home.
That's a home. And so if you think about, you know, what it takes to build a home, people are moving through these homes so fast, and then they're wondering why their kids aren't growing up with structure or like this concept of family. Mm-hmm. And it's like, we're moving our homes too fast. We're moving people through stuff too fast. And Stephen's right. TikTok videos are a couple seconds long, and pretty soon relationships will be a few seconds long. And then they'll wonder, why doesn't anybody have like a good structured family? And it's like, it's gone, man. We don't do that anymore.
Yeah. No, it's that's why I'm so grateful again for what we do and the ability to have our finger on that pulse to hopefully, make real changes in people that make that ripple effect through society.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you, but it's like sometimes we get paralyzed by how big a problem is. Be like, oh my God, this problem's too big. I don't even know how I would tackle this. But then it just goes back to that, like you tackle it one problem at a time.
Yeah, you start chewing.
One person at a time.
Yep. And we worry about stuff that's either in the past.
Yeah.
So a lot of anxiety, I think, comes from people's past. And everything in your past has an expiration date.
Yep.
And that's hard to tell somebody that's been abused or some very significant thing, lost their parents or something like that. I mean, just something horrific. But in reality, everything has an expiration date. Like your past has an expiration date where if you allow it to continue to own real estate in your head, you're robbing future. You're robbing your future. You're robbing the people around you. You're robbing your family. You're robbing your present because you've allowed this past experience to continue to have real estate.
Yeah, exactly.
They're owning real estate in your head. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like I think it was Will Smith. I saw a video of him that he was talking about, it's not your fault what has happened to you, but it is your responsibility to move past and move forward and learn from it. So it's like if you were in an abusive relationship, it's not your fault you're in an abusive relationship, but it is your responsibility to get out of that abusive relationship and move forward.
Isn't it funny? Humans, we will be responsible. We are responsible for some of the bad stuff that's happened to us in our past. I mean, it's just, that's the truth, right? We've made some decisions. It's put us in some positions where we are responsible for these horrible things that have happened to us. A lot of times we're not responsible at all. Like, it's not our fault. Will Smith's 100% right. It's not our fault most of the time. Sometimes. But isn't it funny? We hold on to these things. Most people will hold on to the anxiety of the things that they weren't in control of, but they'll let go of the things that they actually did to others. You know, and here's something. When I run into successful people and you talk to them about their past and you talk to them about the mistakes and things that have happened in their past, most successful people bring up the things that they had control over, because those are the things that are still eating them up. Like if you said, hey, what happened in your past? What's bad? I mean, dude, if you want a sob story, I could tell you. But in reality, the things that keep me up at night are the bad decisions I've made.
Yeah.
Not the things that I've experienced because of other people's bad decisions.
Exactly. And I think just like holding grudges and holding on to that past, it really truly does rob you of your future. Because I mean, just talking from personal experience, it's like I'd always get mad at like, you know, like Russ or Dave or like all those people in the past that like lied to me or stole from me or did all this stuff. It's like, oh, what a bunch of dirtbags, blah, 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 blah. And you'd hold this grudge. But in reality, the only people that it's hurting was me.
Yep.
Because they had moved on. Like,
yeah, they didn't give it a second thought.
Exactly. It's like or maybe they didn't feel like they were doing that. But in my mind, it's like it was the worst thing in the world. And I had every bit of control to just be like, move on. Like,
so I heard this thing. I read this thing or heard it. I don't know. I picked it up the other day, and it was something that made me think about forgiving people.
Yeah.
You know, and when you forgive somebody, you let them off the hook, right? And so a mindset that I've had now is like, I don't want to forgive them until I'm clean of that.
Yeah.
Because if somebody's wronged me, and I forgive you, I forgive, don't worry about it, and then I'm still worried about it, I don't want to let them off the hook.
Yeah.
Like I actually am going to address that with them and say, you know, I'd love to forgive you. However, I'm not over it.
I'm not ready. Yeah.
And if I forgive you, that means you get to be over it. And this was you. And so there's some things that are just unforgiven, right? Does that mean I'm going to focus on it and think about it? Well, no, I'm going to absolutely try not to.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I'm just going to go around this world and like forgive people that have wronged me somehow. I'm just going to not forgive them, but
not let them occupy space.
They don't get to own real estate.
Exactly.
No way, man. You're not going to give them real estate, and you're not selling them real estate.
Yeah.
You're giving them real estate.
Exactly.
You're giving them real estate in your mind, and there's only so much of it. But when you forgive them, they still own that real estate, and guess what? You no longer own real estate in their head.
Yep.
And I think that if we started holding people accountable, a little bit more accountability would go a long way, because people would stop wronging other people. You know,
I agree. Yeah. That, I mean, going back to that whole accountability thing, we're in a society to, like you say, quickly forgive. Like, oh, don't worry about it. I'm sure.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
It's all right. It's all right. No worries. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
But in reality, it's like, no, like address it, have those difficult conversations, and then move forward.
Yeah, hey, you wronged me. Hey, this is messed up, man.
Exactly.
What are you going to do to fix it? Oh, I'm not going to do anything. Okay, fair enough. Well, have a nice day.
I think Jordan Peterson actually said it in I think it was in his latest book, that the difficult conversations you put off now are creating future problems.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, you have to force those bad conversations. Students are that way.
Yeah.
Right? Students are that way. You have to force some of those bad conversations where you bring them in and you're like, hey, man, you're flaking. You're not showing up to your lessons. What's going on? I haven't seen you. And you don't want to hear it. And you have, as an instructor, you don't want to hear, well, I'm quitting karate. So you avoid the conversation, but it doesn't really change the scenario. It just allows that to take more space, real estate in your head. So why not just address it so you can flush it?
Exactly.
Right? Hey, get to the bottom of it, flush it. Hey, I wish you the best. Hey, you're not going to train anymore? Okay, cool. Hey, we'd love to have you in the future. Be good. And then move on.
Yeah.
Think about the alternative to that. If you don't talk about, or if you don't, let's say, rip the Band-Aid off,
is that student could then become a bad example and then take other students with them.
Bingo. Yeah. So when you rip the Band-Aid off, rip the scab, rip the Band-Aid, I like that. If you rip the Band-Aid off, you're really kind of addressing the problem, and then you're limiting other students' exposure to that problem for sure. Yeah. And yeah, you don't want them to control your culture. And if the student's been around a long time, they have an unbalanced amount of control of your culture.
Absolutely.
Like the black belts have an unbalanced amount of control of your culture. So you got to make sure you're very aware of who you promote to black.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's, yeah. We love black belts, but they're the biggest pain in the ass sometimes.
When somebody got up to brown or black, one of the things that that just, and it's an egotistical thing. I mean, I'm here to tell you, this isn't going to sound good at all. But one of the things I kept thinking is, hey, this is a black belt that's been training for 10 years. Where the hell are they going to go to get training like this? Right?
Yeah.
I'm special. And it's like, the only thing that made me special is I stayed on the road ahead of them.
Yeah.
Right? So I had a couple brown belts quit. I remember this kid named Ardo Khan, right? And it's funny, if he ever listens to this, he'll be like, oh my gosh. He came into the tournament a couple years ago looking for me, right?
Really?
Yeah, I used to train him as a kid.
Oh, wow.
I trained his two little brothers. And they moved to Park City, and they drove from Park City down to Taylorsville, which is like 50 minutes.
Yeah.
No big deal. But in the winter, it totally sucks.
Yeah.
Because of snow and deer and elk on the freeway. And so anyway, the mom and the dad were finally like, hey, we're going to transfer the kids up to this other school up there. And I said, well, you guys are running into a problem. Art's been training here for 12 years. He's probably more trained than that instructor up there. Well, yeah, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. So, and Art was like 12 or 13. By the time Art was 16, he was the chief instructor up there. And he came into our tournament, and he's like 18, 19 years old. I'm like, hey, what are you doing, man? He's like, I run the Bobby Lawrence up there. Really? I don't know if I should say Bobby Lawrence, but yeah.
All right, whatever.
I run the Bobby Lawrence up in Park City. I was like, oh, cool. How long have you been doing that? Oh, since I was 16, 17. I said, was it true when I told you guys you're trained better than the instructor? Yeah, I became the instructor. I was like, exactly. And so funny. I kind of operate like this egotistical mindset, not when the white belts come, not when the yellow belts, orange belts, whatever, but when somebody's been training for 10 or 15 years, you realize that now you've done a really good job training. If you've done your job well, you've done a great job training them. Where are they going to go? Yep. Now, are there people in the state that are more skilled, talented? Of course. Are they hard to find? Yeah, they're not exactly in the phone book anymore. You're gonna have to dig. You're gonna have to dig through and find some people, and that's a pain in the butt.
No, I think I know for me, sometimes we take for granted the amount of experience that we do have. Yeah. Because you remember Kent.
Oh, for yeah, Kent. He had like the wrapped mini.
Yeah, the Mini Cooper.
Mini Cooper, that's right. Okay.
Kent, he was training for a long time, and then he got wishy-washy and started going other places. He said he went to I think it was a Bobby Lawrence actually, and he went to their advanced class or whatever, and he did DM3, and everybody was staring at him like, "How do you know that?" And he goes, "What are you talking about?" He goes, that's one of our like third, fourth degree black belt techniques.
And he's like, I learned that the third month I was.
He goes, I learned this at yellow belt.
Yeah.
And they're like, are you serious? And he's like, yeah. And then he came back and was like, I'm really sorry. Like, I should have listened.
You guys operate in a legitimate place.
Yeah. And
I've had that happen.
Yeah.
I've done it with Taekwondo guys. In Taekwondo, they don't teach a lot of grab escapes, right? Because grabbing's really not part of their sport. It's more of a, Taekwondo's has some sport rules, right? Yeah. And so I remember this second degree, his name was Darren, and he's like, hey, you train Kempo. I could kick you in the head. And I'm like, yeah, for sure. I could kick you in the head too. Yeah. And then he's like, so what does Kempo learn that Taekwondo doesn't? And so I did that like single hand grab, and I put him into like a hold. He dropped to his knee. Oh shit. Oh God. Where'd you learn that? And I'm like, oh, we teach this. You do? And I'm like, yeah, man, you learned anything like that? I've never seen anything like that. And, it just kind of goes to show you that sometimes you get a little down on yourself. But if you train and you're like doing martial arts every day, you picked up some things that are like, they're hard to pick up. You just don't pick them up. People just don't pick those up. So it's kind of fun. But yeah, those stories are great when you see those people. No, yeah. And I think that's just a testament to the, going back to what you're talking about with culture, the culture that you've been able to cultivate with TruMotion and with the instructors. I mean, with being a part of so many, or seeing different organizations, it's such a unique ability to be able to do what you do.
in terms of, everybody's on board with wanting the same thing. Everybody's on board with the same message. Everybody's got no ego. And if they do, they drop it pretty quick because they know they're not that special. And it's like,
it's all about the love, man.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, look at people, and I can honestly say I've probably only trained in 20 something years, maybe 3 people that I haven't loved. And you look at people and you're like, man, I really care about this kid.
Yeah.
I'm going to take this kid. I'm going to talk to this kid as if he's my kid. And it may not be the perfect talk. When you look at a 12-year-old and you're like, man, your push-ups look like crap, man.
Yeah.
You got to stop doing those push-ups. Or you look at a 15-year-old and you're like, man, you're being a pussy.
Yeah.
And parents will be like, oh, I can't believe you talk to a 15-year-old like that. And you're like, how do you think kids at 15 talk to other kids?
Yeah.
Right? It goes back to like training animals, dogs, horses. Like horses, how do they communicate? They bite each other, they kick each other. How do dogs communicate? They grab each other by the neck, pin each other to the ground, and snarl. And they create a pecking order. Then after that, it's like, you step out of that pecking order, I'm going to grab you by the neck and throw you on the ground.
Yeah.
And then this happens a few times, I'm going to kick you out of the pack. But when you're training kids, I've just looked at everybody and I thought, if this guy was my brother, if this lady was my mom, how would I talk to her?
Yeah.
How would I talk to my mom? I'd be like, hey, Mom, hey, those push-ups, come on. I'd rather you do 5 good ones than whatever you're doing right there.
Yeah.
Hey, I'd rather you give a little bit more effort. You got to bend those knees, work those legs out. Those legs are going to get stronger, but it's going to suck.
Well, and it's the fact that you're able to let them know that really tells you that you care.
Yeah.
The fact that you're able to be like, hey, I'm telling you this because I do care about you, says a lot more than just glancing over it, not saying a thing.
And you look at everybody in society and their bullshit meter is off the charts. Like everybody can sniff it out a mile away.
Yep.
30 years ago in martial arts, when you were a martial arts instructor, your students only knew what you told them.
Yep.
And they only knew everything they knew about the martial arts is what you told them. Everything they knew about you is what you told them. And now, if you don't think everybody's doing a background check on you, they're looking through Facebook to see all your pictures, they know everything about you, you have to live the life to where somebody looks at you and like, yeah, I want that person around my kids. Hey, I want this person to train my 16-year-old daughter. Hey, I want this person to be around my mom. Hey, I signed my wife up there. Hey, my husband trains with this guy. This guy's legit.
Yeah.
And they don't care that you're not the toughest UFC fighter in the world. You're not the toughest fighter in the world. They care that you're authentic.
Yeah.
Right. And they care that what you're training them is real and you're constantly trying to improve it, but they care that you're authentic. Mm-hmm. Authenticity is a huge thing because it's becoming rare.
Yeah.
It's becoming more and more rare.
No, I totally agree. Cause I remember coming up through the ranks and like being with you on advanced tests and going through advanced tests with you and then becoming, a young instructor with you around before I really started to truly get to know you. I was like, damn, dude, this guy's like riding my ass. What an asshole. Like, Jesus, I'm freaking trying my heart, blah, 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 blah. And then it's like looking back on it, it's like, you were the only one that called people out on their BS. It's like, you really feel like that was your best? You really are telling me that's the best you can do? I
wish I could take all the credit, dude. My dad was the best dad ever. He was our baseball coach. He was our wrestling coach. And he would just tell you like it is.
Yeah.
Like he would just tell you, I remember being scared of the ball playing baseball. And so what did my dad do? My dad took me out in the backyard, threw the ball at me until I wasn't scared anymore. And you're like, really? Your dad did that? Yeah. And you'd be like, well, that's child abuse. Oh gosh, let's not go down that road.
Whatever.
But, he was also the guy that was like, teach me how to swing the bat. He was also the guy that was playing catch with me. He was also the guy that was like making me shovel the snow. Mm-hmm. And he was always just real. And my dad would say stupid stuff just like I do. My dad would show emotion just like I do. I guess I do it just like he did. But he would be the first guy to give somebody a hug.
Yeah.
Right? He'd be the first guy to tell you, hey, your efforts are shit.
Yeah.
And he had several sayings that you're like, where did you get this? Right? Where did you get this? I used one of them the other day, and it's vulgar, but it's funny as can be. If you were kind of whining, right? And this, I'm talking about when I was 7 or 8. I didn't know what these words meant. But if you were kind of whiny, my dad would be like, "You looking for sympathy? Look in the dictionary between shit and syphilis." Now I knew what shit was.
Yeah.
I had no idea what syphilis was until I was probably like 30, right? Or
You're
25 or something. I had no idea what that was.
Yeah.
But I understood that, what that meant was, you're whining,
Yeah.
like begging me to give you some sympathy, and you're not in a position to receive sympathy because you haven't tried.
Yeah.
And sympathy goes to those that try and fail.
Yeah.
You have failed without trying. So you need to make an adjustment.
Exactly. So it's like, I know for me, I've grown leaps and bounds just by being around you more often, talking to you more often, being a part of the group. It's like, because you knew me as a young instructor, you saw the dumb stuff I was doing, and I stayed in that dumb space for quite a while. Then all of a sudden, like after a few years of, being around you, being around the group and everything, oh, what happened? I started to grow. Things started to work often. Everything was starting to roll the right direction. And it's like, it's because you had that ability to work with people and call people out on their BS, and but yet by doing that, that shows how much you care about people. Because if you didn't care about me, because let's be honest, that shows the character that you have to care enough about someone else's business that you're not really profiting from.
Yeah, I could tell a story right now that is. I appreciate you saying those things. Those are very kind words. And you and I both know a couple people that run a school in Sandy. This is a great example of this.
Yep.
But so I knew these guys as kids. Basically, one of them I knew when he was 17. So he's basically a twerp kid,
Yeah.
And he grew up into a man, and he wanted to run a school, and he was running a school, and he was working under Dave, right?
Yep.
And he wanted to work under me, and I was like, okay, cool. You guys have to listen. You got to do this and this. Just some basic stuff, right? Basic, just, you need to understand social credit, and you need to understand, hey, this is what we're trying to do, and you need to be on board. And if you're not on board, get off board. If
Yep.
you're not on board, get off the bus.
Yep.
And I remember at one point they basically wanted to get off the bus. And they came to me and like, well, we want to change this deal. We want to change this. We want to change this. And I was like, yeah, fine. You guys, you're off the bus.
Yep.
And they're like, you can't do that. And I'm like, I sure as hell can. And so then they called Jack Turner, right? And they're like, we want a meeting. And Jack's like, hey, these guys want to meet. And I'm like, screw those guys. Like, I'm not going over there. And they're like, oh, you hate those guys? I'm like, no, I just don't. If you said, hey, let's go help some people that don't give a shit about you, or let's go golfing, I'm going to be like, let's go golfing.
Yeah.
And so we end up going over there, and I'm just sitting there smiling the whole time. And these guys are like basically trying to tell Jack to force me to let them back on the team. And I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
And I looked at them and I said, hey, this is where you guys have screwed up. I haven't made any money off your dojo.
Yeah.
Like when you guys came to me, your dojo was grossing about 13 grand a month. Now it's grossing over 20. So that's tripled your personal pay. And I said, I've added up everything I've benefited from you guys. Do you know how much? So you guys have benefited just under $10,000 a month for 2.5 years. And it was like, maybe, what, 250, 300 grand.
Yeah.
So you guys have benefited $250,000 plus. Do you know how much I have made off that 250,000? And it was like $4,100. And I had it broke down.
Yeah.
I go, I've made $4,100 in 2.5 years. I said, you guys have zero leverage on me.
Yeah.
The only leverage you had on me is you were part of the team and you were bringing positive energy. And I appreciated it. Now that you're not doing that, I don't want you on the team.
Exactly.
Thank you. And I said, where you really screwed up is if you were paying me, say 30 grand a year or 40 grand a year, 50 grand a year to a substantial amount to where that was going to be a financial hit if I kicked you off the team. I said, then you would have leverage. But I said, right here, you don't have any leverage. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, and they're looking at Jack, and Jack's like, let him back on the team. I'm like, no.
Nope.
And Jack's like, okay, guys, well, this is pretty much it. And I'm like, all right, see ya.
Yeah.
And it was kind of funny. It was heartbreaking. And somebody, if they were sitting on a fly on the wall in that meeting, they were like, Tyler's such a jerk. I walked out of there heartbroken because I thought to myself, I've invested into my friendship with these guys. I invested 2.5, 3 years of my time into these guys to better their scenario. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, I got crapped on. And I didn't want anything from these guys. Like, there was a couple avenues I got paid. I got paid off, I think, Brown or Black Test or something, and I got paid off Academy.
Yeah.
And basically, there was no avenues for me to get paid but I still helped him because I liked him.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see him succeed, and I wanted to see him run a good, solid school. And one of them doesn't teach martial arts anymore. One of them quit, and the other one's running a school. And according to people I know that know him and help him with his business, it's not going so well. And could it go better if he was part of my team? Yeah, possibly. Well, the history would say yes.
Yeah, I would say yes.
I would say yes, but that's egotistical for me to say. But I would say, historically speaking, that's
true.
the case. And it's their ego that kind of screwed them. And at the end of the day, people would say, well, it's Tyler flexing he's just an asshole. But at the end of the day, I was heartbroken.
Yeah.
I didn't want that.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt heartbroken about it. And I walked out of there sad. And I was just like, well, that's unfortunate. But I can't go back there.
Mm-hmm.
Why? They screwed it up.
Yeah.
I can't go back and offer them that service for free again.
Yeah.
No,
I remember that whole scenario, and you could tell that you were sad about it.
Yeah, it was a bummer.
It was a real big bummer. I mean, because they're both talented guys.
Oh, talented, good looking. They're both studs. They're physically in great shape.
Yeah.
They're great martial artists. They're good with people. They have got all the qualities that are like intangibles.
Yep.
And I mean, talk about two physical just beasts, right?
Yeah.
They're two physical great guys, and they've got all these talents and skills. And the thing that they're missing is some leadership.
Yep.
And their egos won't allow them to be led.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate, and that's just the way it is. I think Dave is the same way,
Yeah, I think so too. Unfortunately.
Dave would make twice as much money working for someone else. I mean, and we know the other guy downtown, same deal. I don't want to say his name, but same deal. It's like he was making into the six figures working for me. I remember when he came to me and he wanted to work in the martial arts. He wanted to teach martial arts again for a living. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, buddy. His name's Aaron. I said, okay, Aaron, how much do you need to make? And he's like, well, I need to make $1,800 a month. And I said, really, that's it? $1,800 a month is not a lot of money. That's going to pay your mortgage and your car payment. I don't have a car payment. He was driving that van. Remember that shitty van? And I was like, $1,800 a month is going to pay everything. Well, I'd like a little bit of breathing room, And I said, okay, so $2,000 a month is going to pay everything you need to pay. Yeah. And I said, what about your child support? Well, no. And I said, if you're going to work for me, you have to pay child support. You have to pay your child support on time when due.
Yeah.
How much is it? It's $200. I said, okay, so $2,200 pays all your bills. Yes. And I go, for $2,200, I can count on you 6 days a week to step it up and learn how to do this business the correct way, so it'll last you a lifetime. Yes, absolutely. Sure. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Blah, 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 blah. Well, 2 years later, he's making six figures.
Yeah.
His life's changing. He's buying a house. He's getting married. Everything's going good. And then he decides, well, I'm not doing this anymore. And he was dealing with some personal issues, right? He was dealing with some personal issues in his marriage and, substance issues and stuff like that. But he ended up quitting. And I guarantee he's never made that money since, and he's never made that money before. And not that the money's the issue, but I was not even in his business.
Yeah.
And I wasn't like up his business.
Yeah.
He wanted to do different things in the dojo, and I was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. Hey, I remember this gal came in one time, and she's like, he's like, well, you got this sales rep wants to meet you. I'm like, what is it? And it's like, oh, she's advertising. I'm like, oh, brother, how much is it? It's $400 a month. I'm like, $400 a month, man, that's $5,000 a year. You understand? $5,000 a year. You're saying that we need to advertise $5,000 a year. Yeah. I'm like, okay. I'm like, I'll meet him. And then I show up, and it's this gal in this mini skirt, and she's got her chest is popping out of her shirt, and she's just cute as a bug, right? She's cute gal. And I just look at Aaron and smile, and I'm like, really?
Yeah.
I'm like, are you serious?
This is what now
this is what we're doing? I'm like, and I took him in the back room, like, really? Well, I think it'll be great for our business. I think it'll be great for our business. I go, how many times has she been in to tell you about this? She's been in 3 times. I'm like, and are you in love with her at this point or what? Like, I don't think she's going out with you, bro, when we sign up for this advertising. I really would like to do it. I really like to do it. I said, okay, great. And this goes back to the Netflix special that we need to write. But I'm like, okay, so I sign it up, and I go, she's not coming in to help you, bro. You understand when we sign this contract, oh, yeah, they're sending her in. Blah, blah, blah. I said, no, they're going to send someone else in and say that she got moved to a different territory because she's the salesman.
Yeah.
She is not the help.
Yep.
No. And I'm like, watch. And sure enough, man, we signed the deal. she came in one time after that and talked to him about advertising. And then the next month she was transferred to a new territory.
Of course.
And then of course this zitty face freaking 23-year-old nerd kid shows up and Aaron's just like, wah, wah, wah.
Well, I guess you're right.
And I'm like, there you go, dude.
Yep.
And then I'm like, well, how long's the contract? A year. I'm like, oh, thank heaven. Like, let's get out of this thing.
Yeah. No, it's funny how we tend to get in our own way. I know I got in my own way for quite a long time, and it derailed my success to a later time. And in reality, it's probably a good thing because then I was able to handle that success a little bit better. But you run a great program. The people that you work with, I feel like are very high character people. Obviously they're all young, and it's like, I always have to remember when I was young. So it's like when you're dealing with these young kids, you're just like, you want to smash their head against the wall. But then you're like, okay, when I was their age, what was I doing? Am I making the same mistakes that they were making right now? And it's like, the chances are the answer is probably yes. But no, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to come talk with us, come share your story.
You show up with the best swag.
I try to.
You do, man. You always come to. I'm wearing the Jordans, the TruMotion Jordans right now, man. This is awesome swag.
Yeah. No. We got cool stuff.
You got some cool stuff, man.
We got cool stuff to promote, and
Mark comes through.
I do.
This is true.
I do my best.
Right, Stephen?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he always has the best swag.
So now it's time to get more swag to
promote
more stuff out there. So, but no, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know you're a busy man, and I really had a fun time listening to the stories, listening to a lot of the stuff you're talking about. I took a lot out of this little interaction. So hopefully the people listening can take just as much out of it as well. But obviously we'll have to have you on again when we get some other masters in town, when Master Murakami comes out in January.
Sure.
We'll have to have you guys tag teaming again, because I think you guys talking together, oh my God. Like,
it's a good time.
How much time do we have?
I don't know, but we could go story time, and
exactly.
That's days.
That's days. I mean, we can talk about the ping pong tournaments at the cabin.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
Okay, so just a little sidebar. So Brent Murakami, our resident Shaolin monk, I guess it's just bred in him because he's Asian that he's good at ping pong. And every year we have a little holiday party up at Timberlakes in Heber, Utah, where you have a cabin and he's got a ping pong table. One year, we had the most competitive ping pong tournament, I think, ever recorded outside of professional realms.
I was sweating like crazy.
Yes.
Like I had to stop and like wipe my face off.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, this is getting intense.
Yeah, you were sweating. Brent was sliding on the ground. We had Trent talking
drunk as hell,
talking all this smack and barely hitting the ball.
Yeah.
It was
2 bottles of wine later.
It was nuts. So,
I thought I had him because I was the only sober guy there. I was like, I'm going to take these guys. And then Brent pulled the Asian card and started playing ping pong like a master.
Didn't Danny bring his own ping pong paddle one
Oh
year?
yeah, Danny brought his own ping pong paddle,
Yeah.
and he was ripping it up too.
Oh man, yeah. So we could go story time for days on that. In fact, that we'll probably have another story time with that coming up here soon. But this will definitely be a 2-parter, so make sure you tune in for both parts. It's coming into the holiday season for us here in Utah, so we've got a lot of cool stuff going on. We've got a jam-packed 2024 schedule with all sorts of fun events and 2 tournaments. We got both tournaments, I think, are apparently on the books for the upcoming year, and yeah, just make sure you keep your ears and your eyes open for all the fun stuff we got going on. And if you know anybody that you feel like needs help, like point them in the direction of a studio. I mean, we've got 3 studios here in Utah. We've got the South Jordan, Murray, and West Jordan School. And if you feel like somebody needs some help with anything, please tell them that we can help them out with whatever they need. I mean, that's our goal, is to build better people. And again, I appreciate you taking the time out to come talk with us. And man, I'm excited to hear the comments and the feedback we get from this episode, because like I said, I took a lot out of it. So I appreciate you sharing your knowledge and your understanding with us. And oh yeah, we'll probably have to have you back on again to help promote like tournaments and all that stuff. And
absolutely, our next tournament, April 27th, 2024.
Yeah.
I think the next one's going to be October after that. So.
Yeah, I heard October. We're still, I think, still solidifying what day in October.
It may be the 5th. I think I saw the 5th come across an email.
I think Max was talking about the
yeah, I try not to get too connected with the date until we get a signed contract.
Yeah, so hopefully it'll probably be the 5th, but until we get that contract signed, it's projected to be the 5th. So
absolutely.
But again, thank you for taking the time to come out and speak with us.
Thank you, guys.
We look forward to kicking it back with you next time. So make sure you check us out on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, and we're working on getting put onto the iTunes platform here soon. So thank you very much, Master Martin, for coming on out. Thank you very much, you guys, for taking the time out of your day to listen to us. So
thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.
Kick it with us next time. Bye.